Sorry. So I'm gonna start. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have here today with the last of our series of this month, my dear friend, and I believe boundaries and self-care and self-love and relationship expert, Rivkie Brownstein. I am so glad, I'm so delighted, and so happy to have you here. And so I'm gonna tell you a little bit, guys, how this is gonna work. I'm going to interview Rivkie for half an hour. And throughout the interview, you can send me directly the questions that you have for Rivkie. And then I will tell her after the half an hour is done, or maybe longer, it doesn't have to be that exact. After that, then we're going to have 15 minutes or so of the questions that you might have. But please send it to me directly through the chat. Yeah. So I'm so excited again. Rivkie is a very dear friend. Of course, I'm gonna tell her accomplishments. She grew up in California. She's one of 13 siblings. She grew up in a religious Jewish family. She's been married for 17 years, have 5 kids, Kenai Nahara, and has lived in New York, Florida, New Jersey. She is a certified practitioner of a nurture heart approach. And she's the founder of this incredible WhatsApp community called Nurturing Hearts, and that I'm part of, and I've grown so much from. She is a community for self-love, self-care, loving relationships, and she has conducted very successful workshops on the Nurture Heart approach, self-care, boundaries, parenting, and she's planning to do organization, like home organization workshop too. She has written articles on parenting and other topics for Beis Moshiach, which is a Jewish publication. And I just know Rivkie to be the superstar on like coach, a superstar coach. I don't think I'm biased. I studied, and I've told you this, Rivkie, for many years. I've studied psychology, and I believe that you know much more than I do in many areas. So I'm so glad that you're talking to us about this very special topic, which is boundaries on intimacy and relationships. I'm gonna just change the setting. So thank you so much again for being here. I don't know if this is such an occasion for us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit, Rivkie, how did you get to this topic of not only boundaries, but like self-care? What has been your journey? Just tell us a little bit more.
Okay, so hi everyone. First of all, thank you for that introduction, Sarah Meira. So for me, I found myself, I was married with children, and things were happening to me, and I would get frustrated. Like somebody would say a comment to me and I didn't like it, or somebody would come to my house and it wasn't a good time, or there was something happening that bothered me and I didn't know, should I say something? Should I not say something? And I just realized, like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't have good boundaries. Like, I always feel guilty. Do I have a right to say something? Should I be quiet? Should I not? I really didn't know. And so I just wanted to learn about boundaries for myself so that I could be more comfortable in my relationships, in situations, to be more confident and to know what to do. And also because it was frustrating for me that I would get so affected by things that other people would say or things that other people would do, and I didn't know how to handle it. If everyone doesn't mind to mute, thank you so much. What I did is that I worked with somebody who was an expert in boundaries and codependency to figure out how I can be more confident in these areas. And the more that I learned about boundaries, the better my relationships were getting. And I just learned so much about it in my own life and saw how much it helped my own relationships. So I just got really motivated and passionate about helping other people, because when we know what to do or say in any situation, it just can be so helpful, and things don't have to be such a big deal when we know what to do about them.
That's amazing. So let me ask you, like, how, okay, so you've been married for 17 years, and I'm sure that you encountered this in your personal relationship, like as you were saying. So you started you so what was that day, that what they know that age in which you said, like, okay, how old were you, like, you know, or what was happening in your life that you said, like, okay, because I understand what you're telling me, but like specifically, can you tell us what exactly happened that said, like, okay, also with my husband, I need to do this?
Well, I was very determined, when I got married, that I'm going to be a loving mother and a loving wife, and I'm going to just give love and be positive. And it was at times very challenging to do that. So I guess I would say, maybe like, in my early 30s. So I don't know, like 6 years, 5 years ago, I guess more recently when my kids were getting older. And I just realized that I was not feeling good about myself. I was not loving myself. And I was trying to wake up and be loving to my kids and be loving with my husband and be loving in my relationships. But if I'm not feeling loving to myself, if I don't love myself, if I don't like myself, if I don't feel good about myself, how am I supposed to give to other people, right? Like, we can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
And so I was just in a place of like, oh my gosh, I have this negative voice in my head and it's really weighing me down, blocking me from my goals, blocking me from my relationships, causing me to feel negativity in my relationships. And so I heard about the nurtured heart approach. My sister was a trainer at the time, and she was telling me about how there's this great approach, and it was created for parents and educators for children. But the idea of it is to see the greatness in every person and to focus on what's going right in us instead of what's going wrong. And I decided to go to this training, not necessarily to teach parents and educators, but for myself. Like, how do I see the greatness in me? How do I love myself? Because I believe that the relationship that we have with ourselves is the most important relationship, because the way I treat myself is how I'm automatically going to treat others. So I just was like in this path of awareness of like, I need to learn how to give myself love and how to treat myself like someone that I love if I want to wake up in the morning and have love to give other people.
Amazing, amazing. I love that concept because we've been told, I don't know if this is what everybody experiences, but I remember learning that, it's just about, giving and giving and giving. And like you say, from an empty cup, and people don't say it like this, but, it's assumed like it is kind of praiseworthy, and in many, many other walks of life and religions and philosophical movements, it's all about the giving. Although that is absolutely the goal, it has to be within the realm of feeling feeling willing to give and having something to give. So I love that you're telling us this, because I feel like we all, and I don't know if you guys have any other experience, forgive me if I'm making generalizations, but at least in my case, I felt that I just had to just give without any restrictions and without any consideration of my own well-being. And it was also, I think that we all got, or maybe a lot of us got this click in our head that it cannot be done without boundaries, and it starts from ourselves. So after such a healing path and journey, what would you say, Rivkie, are the three major boundaries in intimacy that you learn in your, as a mother, as a wife, as a coach, whatever you want to say, but like three things specifically in boundaries that you would like to pinpoint for us.
Okay, so the first one I would say is to, whenever they're,
Everybody, okay.
thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so whenever there is like a strong emotion that I'm going to talk about myself, but I feel like we can all apply this. Whenever I'm feeling angry, stressed out, uncomfortable, overwhelmed, judgment coming up, and I want to, for me to pause and so the acronym is HALT, like to ask myself, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Could be other things too, but usually it's one of these things. So I would say when I feel these things and I'm around other people, around my husband, around my kids, to stop and ask myself, like, what am I feeling? And to really get clear with what I'm feeling and with what I need before I even sometimes talk to other people, because I feel like that's a really good boundary for myself. Because, for example, if I'm starving and my husband asks me a question, I can be like, not answer in the nicest way, which I'm sure any mom or person can probably relate to. So if I say, wait, I feel like yelling at this person and they just asked me a question, let me pause and think about it and say, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm hungry. And then I can tell the other person, you know what, I'm really hungry. I can answer you after I eat because I'm feeling like yelling. So just like, please wait until I eat. So I think I need to get clarity on what it is that I'm feeling and what it is that I need. And so I think the way we can get to that clarity is the awareness of like, oh, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling annoyed, I'm feeling frustrated. And to get quiet, I like to put my hand on my heart and be like, Rivkie, what are you feeling? What do you need? Sometimes I need to go out of the room for a second, take some deep breaths, and so the boundary would be to stop and think about like, what am I feeling and what do I need? So that would be number one. The second I would say is to give yourself permission to have fun and to relax. I feel like there's always chores and things that have to be done, whether it's work or with kids or in our relationships, and a lot of shoulds. Like, I should, pay the bills. I should do the dishes. I should do the laundry. I should be, calling this person or that person. But when I know that it's my responsibility to make myself happy and to find ways to have fun, then I can make time to do that. And so one example of that in a relationship is, for example, when my kids are asleep and I want to spend time with my husband, I know that for me, if I'm in my kitchen and there's dishes in the sink and there's laundry next door and there's bills that have to be paid and to-do lists right in front of my face, because I like to write my to-do list in my kitchen on the dry erase board that I can see it. It feels really overwhelming. So for me to say, you know what, let's go sit outside and sit by the fire and talk. So it's a boundary that I'm setting to, let's talk when you're ready to go outside, so that I can create a fun atmosphere, that I can allow myself to relax. It doesn't have to be, I'm responsible for myself. And if something is stressing me out, I can find ways to create fun and to create relaxation in my day, in my life, and my relationship. And then the third thing I would say is to be honest and vulnerable. Now, obviously, with honesty, we want to be careful we're not being hurtful. But what I mean by honest is, for example, if your partner or husband, whatever, wants to, be physical, that's how they feel. And I need emotional connection first for me to say like, hey, I love you so much. And part of the way that gets me in the mood to be physical is emotional connection. And right now I really need to connect emotionally first. And I think that it could be hard when we may feel like, oh my gosh, my husband should know that already, or the other person should know what I need. I've told them so many times. But the truth is that they don't know. Every person acts sometimes in ways that they would want. I might treat my husband in ways that I would want to be treated. So it's important for me to be honest and say like, hey, this doesn't feel comfortable, or I need some space. Or, I'm not feeling up to this right now, or I don't want to have this conversation right now. It's stressing me out. Like, I need some time. So to be honest about what it is that I need from the other person so that they could know. So I would say those are 3 really important, helpful tips.
I love them. Thank you so much. If again, I'm going to repeat, if you guys have any questions throughout this interview, please send me a personal message, a private message with a question, and we will answer the questions at the end. So Rivkie, honestly, like, this is so, I love how clear you are with this topic, because we're, like you said, we're talking about 2 people here. It's very, so first of all, I just want to say that I believe that what you're telling us also comes from like starting the boundaries within ourselves. Like, we ourselves have to have boundaries first with ourselves, our thoughts, our moods, our emotions, right? And then we can really extend those boundaries to other people. But at the same time, when you're talking about these, it makes me feel so honestly validated, because we're talking about different people with different needs, and it's very, very hard to, and it's very, and I'm glad that you're being so honest and blunt about this. There's nothing wrong with communicating your needs and stating and saying, I need this before this, you know, like, especially we're talking about intimacy. And you know, not everybody here is might be religious, or whoever is watching this might be religious or not, but this is, it works throughout, you know, all walks of life, you know. It's very interesting that and I'm in contact with people who are not Jewish, religious, not religious, and we struggle with that. Like, how do we convey to our loved one, right, our spouse, our partner, whatever, that there's something that we don't like. And I see this, you know, happening. So I love that you said it. To recap, you said to be honest, to create create ways of relaxation, right, like to create atmospheres in which you can relax. And the third one, I'm sorry, the first one was what?
To like halt, to stop and ask
Right,
myself, like, what am I feeling and what do I need
right.
before reacting?
Right. So that is, those are very, very important lessons that I appreciate you sharing with us. So, what do you have in your work as a coach and in your own personal life? What do you think are the common obstacles that we can encounter as women while we become more aware of these boundaries in our relationship? Like, what would you say are those like obstacles?
So that's a good question. If everyone doesn't mind to just check if you're muted, because it's a little distracting. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you. So what I would say is that, you know, a lot of times, you know, we may have been taught, many people have been taught false belief systems. Like, for example, it's selfish to put yourself first. It's mean to tell someone else that you're not okay with something. So I feel like an obstacle could be our emotions, you know, like I might feel guilty when I say what I need. I might feel like it's my problem if someone else is upset. You know, if someone wants to come to my house at 10 o'clock at night to speak to me and I say no, they might be hurt or upset. So I might think that if they're upset, I'm doing something wrong.
Mhm.
And I think that emotions will come up. And a good example of this that I can share in my own life is that, you know, my husband asked me if I can go somewhere with him, and he was okay going by himself or with me, but I really didn't feel comfortable with some of the people that were going to be there, and I wasn't in a good place to go, and I knew that it wouldn't be good for me, and I said, no, like I don't want to go. And I felt so guilty because I knew how much he wanted me to come, and I knew how much the people there wanted me to be there, and they might be like, oh, why isn't she here?
Right.
I knew that that's not my problem, but I felt guilty, and I called somebody to talk about it, and I said, you know, I really don't want to go, but I feel so guilty. And she said, you know what, take your guilt. It's okay to feel guilty and still don't go. So I think it's important to know that feelings are going to come up, emotions are going to come up. And just because something is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. You know, if we were taught certain ways of thinking, or we were taught that it's wrong to say no, let's say, so when we say no, we're going to feel guilty. And I think that the biggest
Sorry.
challenge.
I'll mute people. Sorry.
Thank you. I think that the biggest challenge is to know that when these feelings come up, and to know that just because we have these feelings doesn't mean we're doing the wrong thing. The right thing doesn't always feel amazing. Sometimes it's difficult.
I love that. Oh my gosh. You know, I feel, because I know you for such a long time and we've had very deep conversations about this topic. I myself, I can tell you, I've gained so much from this, so much, because it is true. We assume that because something feels in a certain way, then it must be wrong, or we must be wrong. And it's not like that. It's not like that. It actually, so, you know, you bring a very, very interesting point, which I want to highlight really, which is there is a need for a third objective person. You mentioned at that moment in your example, you had, you know, this situation, made this decision with your husband. You set this boundary with him, and you felt bad. And then what did you do instead of like? Because sometimes a lot of us will we will like act out on that guilt and maybe scream at our husband and like say like, oh, like trying to us make us feel better. But instead of that, you're bringing something very, very special, which I also read in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's advice for couples and marriages, which is to bring an objective person. So you call this, I don't know, you didn't specify what it is, but I'm assuming was a friend or a mentor, whatever. And and you discuss this with this person, and this person gave you the courage to see this situation objectively and say, you're doing it right, and it doesn't feel right, but it's the right thing. So I would you agree, Rivki, that that is an important lesson? And I'm sure you're gonna say yes, but like how, another question that I would like to let's say a follow-up question to that would be like, how do you find these people? What are those traits that you would, because not everybody, you wouldn't ask everybody, right?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because sometimes, I might forget, and people could forget, and just talk. Let's say I might say, "Hey, what do you think I should? This thing is coming up with my husband, with someone who, maybe is not in a relationship or doesn't feel like they have the best relationship." I mean, not that there's any judgment in there or anything, but for me, it's important to find people that I admire their relationship, or I feel like they have good boundaries, or I feel like they really understand emotion. Part of my boundaries, one of the boundaries I have for myself, is finding safe people that I feel can benefit me to talk to. I'm not going to just go to anybody and talk about my relationship. I'm not just going to call anybody, and because I have a purpose. I want to work on my relationship. I want to bring out the best in myself and my husband and my kids. And so I want to find people that I feel inspired by speaking to them, or I feel validated, or I feel like they have something that they're in the same similar situation, or they understand the struggle of boundaries. And
Mhm.
those are the people, if I have two people or even one person that I can turn to in these times, I find it extremely helpful, because I feel like I said, we have emotions that come up, and sometimes we could be stuck in the guilt, or stuck in the shame, or stuck in the maybe I'm just exhausted and I can't see straight. So calling an outside perspective from someone that I trust, or that I look up to, or that I, feel safe to talk to about it. Sometimes, I do believe that we have a very strong intuition and we have the answers inside of ourselves.
Mhm.
But sometimes saying it out loud and sharing it with another person can help us to come to that answer and to come to that conclusion. Whereas holding it inside could make the problem even worse. That's when we could start to get a headache, start to get really angry and in a bad mood. And whenever I am, brave enough or vulnerable enough to pick up the phone and talk to somebody and say, "Hey, do you have a few minutes? This is what I'm going through. Do you have any suggestions, or how would you deal with the situation?" Or not even necessarily do I always want feedback, but even just sharing what I'm going through
Mhm.
can help me get clarity, and
Yeah.
can help all the someone one time said to me, I couldn't make a decision about something. And she said, close your eyes and forget about what you think you should do, and forget about what you have to do, and forget about what other people want, and forget about what you read in books. Just close your eyes and listen to your body. Like, how does this decision feel in your body? And that was really powerful thing for me, because we know we know if we should go somewhere, we know if we shouldn't go somewhere, we know if we should say something, if we shouldn't say something, and we know the truth by the way it feels. And I think sometimes it's just good to get that outside support to help us figure out, like, what's going on in my intuition, like what is the best situation for me in this case.
I love that. I love that. And it is, thank you so much for clarifying how to find these person and these people, because it is important. I don't know, and I always thought like, oh, religious people that come from big families have it all figured out. They have tons of siblings or tons of aunts, and people that can support. But sometimes, and the Luaich Rebbe, when I read that, I was very surprised that he said like, don't ask people from your family. He actually said like, ideally, he said ideally someone outside your family, and I thought this is very interesting, and someone who cares for you, and like exactly what you're describing. And I thought that very empowering as someone who didn't grow up religious, did cannot ask anybody really, that is not religious, how to lead a life in intimacy, also in intimacy or in marriage issues. that was an impediment for me. And I felt it was what you're sharing is very powerful, because it could be a friend, it could be a caring rabbi or a spiritual leader, it could be a mentor, it could be, it could be anybody who really truly cares and knows how to deal with a situation like this. So I appreciate that. So is there any other obstacle that we might encounter, let's say specifically in the realm of intimacy? Would you say there is a specific, besides from our feelings, specific obstacles to
Yeah,
achieve?
I think that sometimes, I think that the other person reacts to how strong we are. So what I mean by that is, if I feel like I'm not allowed to have needs, and if I feel like my needs are silly, or I feel like I need to get the other person to agree with me or understand me in order to have a need, then it may not work as well. Because let's say I tell my husband, I need to be alone for 10 minutes, but I feel guilty about it and I'm unsure. And if he's like, why? Like, I don't understand why you need to be alone. Like, everybody's waiting for you, let's say, for example.
Hmm.
So it could be an obstacle when the other person is upset or the other person doesn't understand. And I think the way to overcome that obstacle is when I know what I need, and I know I'm allowed to have needs, and I know I deserve to meet my own needs, I can say, listen, I know you may not understand. I know you may not agree. I know you may not like it, but this is what I need. And I feel like when we are secure and confident in what we need, the other person is going to be able to handle it better. And even if they're not, sometimes a person may genuinely be upset because it's not in their best interest, and of course, if you care about the relationship, you want to talk about it maybe at a later time, or you want to validate their feelings. I know this is really hard for you. I know you really want me to come with you, but I'm so sad that I cannot. So sometimes when we can't do something that someone else wants us to do, they're going to be upset and they may not like it.
Right.
And I think that's an obstacle. But if like we spoke about it with someone else that we trust, or we really, really deeply know, I'm not doing this for selfish reasons, I'm doing this for my mental health, I'm doing this because if I don't, it's going to have major side effects to my health, to my emotional well-being, to whatever it is.
Or even
Um,
the attachment, even for the attachment, for
even
the
for the
relationship,
relationship, like I'm
right?
going to have resentment to you. Like I remember one time somebody asked me something that if I can do it for her, and she kept asking and asking, and she would get really upset when I was saying no. And one time I said to her, listen, I care about my relationship with you. And if
Mhm.
I say yes, I will feel resentful and not be able to be in this relationship because I cannot do this. I know to you it seems silly. I know you may not understand. Because
Yeah,
to her, it's like, why can't you just say yes? Like, what's the big deal? But to me, it was something that I knew I would feel resentful and I knew I couldn't handle it.
yeah,
And so it's important. So it's an obstacle when the other person doesn't like it. But that's why I think it's important to check ourselves. Am I being selfish? Can I push myself? Or is this something I really cannot do?
yeah,
And to know that I have a right to my own boundaries and what works for me and what doesn't, even if someone else doesn't necessarily love it. If it's a problem that, is not working, then we may want to, go to a third party together, or we may want to explore how can we compromise and make this work for both of us. Of course, it's not just about, I don't care if you're happy or not, this is what I need. Of course not. We do
right.
care about how our partner feels, but I think, it's coming to that compromise of like, this is what I need, this is what you need. Let's come to a compromise where we're both comfortable.
Exactly. And it comes back to the one of the first lessons that you mentioned before, which is the honesty. Your husband, your partner is allowed to have those feelings too,
Mhm.
just as much as you have those feelings. They're, our partners might not react well to their boundaries, and vice versa. By the way, they also are allowed to put boundaries that we might not like. And I think that it was a really special that you mentioned honesty, because I am, and you actually clarified that you're referring to like caring honesty. It's not that feisty, attacking honesty. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, communicating, stating lovingly, understanding what is the deep feeling inside of us before we even say, things to our partner. And if our partner says something, how does that make you feel, right? Like if he's stating a boundary, how do you feel? deep down, not the reactive emotion, correct? So would you say that is something that it's like a flow that we have to kind of understand in long-term relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to know that just like I have needs and I have wants, so does the other person. And when the other person is telling me something that I might not like, this is hard for me. But to remember, okay, like how would I want to be treated, and how would I want someone to respond, and if it's something that I don't understand, to give them that same grace that I would give myself. Listen, I don't understand and I feel upset. Can we talk about this? Or, I'm going to give you, how can we, if it's really bothering me, I might say like, okay, can we talk about this more? Can we think about how we could both be comfortable? But I think to be respectful and to know that, I don't, my husband doesn't always understand me. My friends don't always understand me.
Right.
And I know that I still have to take care of myself anyway. So how can I apply the same rule to that other person so that I'm giving them the same, I'm treating them the same way I'm treating myself, because we want to give that, understanding to other people that we give ourselves too.
Right. So that leads us really to my last question, so we can open it for questions. Please, again, post any direct. I have more questions from people that could not attend. But if you can please, whoever is attending can post some direct questions, we can ask Rivkie and take advantage of this time. But so just to conclude, Rivkie, how do we lovingly, because it's very good in theory what we're talking about, but specifically in practice, how do we um, state our boundaries with our partners? Specifically, I would say in general in a relationship, but let's say specifically in the intimate, realm. How do we do it? Like, how do we say it?
How do we make a boundary, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that when there's a problem or there is pain or there is friction or uncomfortable negative energy or feeling ongoing, like, okay, there's an issue here. And, like you said, it could be with anybody. It could be with a friend. It could be with myself. It could be with my kids. It could be with my partner. It could be with my husband. Then I need to stop and think about, is there a boundary here that needs to be made?
Mhm.
So the first step is to create the boundary. So there's 3 steps: create, state, and maintain. So the first step is to create the boundary.
Mhm.
So like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give an example to make this very clear. So like I mentioned earlier, if I notice that I'm really grumpy in the morning every time my husband asks me questions, I'm going to create a boundary, which is going to be, okay, I need to eat breakfast before I have any long questions or conversations. That's okay. I just created the boundary. The next step is to state the boundary, to let the other person know. So I'm going to go to my husband and I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that I'm very grumpy in the morning when you ask me questions. So I've decided that I'm only going to be able to answer questions, because I want to be kind to you, after I eat breakfast. So I'm stating it. I'm letting the other person know. And the third step is to maintain the boundary. So I might feel guilty. I might feel shame. My husband asks me a question. I might feel like, oh my gosh, Rivkie, what's wrong with you? Answer the question. You just asked you, where's the mayonnaise?
What's wrong with him? That's your thought. My thought is, what's wrong with you? I told you already.
So what am I going to do in those situations
Right.
when my boundary is being tested? So I have to have a plan. So remember my why. Remember why I have this boundary. Okay, remember I made this boundary because it doesn't lead anywhere good, because I feel guilty afterwards, because I say things I don't mean. Another thing is, whatever system's going to work for you. Maybe my system will be like, hey, when I forget and I'm like not being really nice, can you please remind me that I need to eat before we talk? Because sometimes I forget. Or I might want to call a friend and talk about it. I might say, hey, could you be like my person that I can text or let you know how it went? Because I'm really working on this week. And, after the morning, I'm going to text you and let you know how it goes. That might help me to be able to keep my boundary when I know I have someone that I'm going to check in with. So whatever it is that's going to help me to keep that boundary, I'm going to want to use in the maintain. So to create a boundary, to state your boundary, and then to find ways to maintain your boundary. That's how really to have to make a boundary for yourself.
Right. So that's create, Create, state,
and
and
maintain.
maintain. Okay, that's amazing. And always, would you say that it's important to have like positive language and like, just the validation of the emotions? Is that something that we can introduce in the when we're stating the boundary?
I think it's important to, words that come from the heart enter the heart.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that if I'm feeling really triggered or I'm feeling really angry, to wait until I feel better and
Mhm.
to wait because, I feel like it's natural human
Mhm.
tendency to get defensive
Mhm.
when we're being yelled at or when we're not being spoken to in a kind way.
Right.
And so I want to first take time to get to a calmer place before I'm going to let you know my boundary. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be received
Effective.
very well. And at the end of the day, it's like, what do I want? I want to have a good relationship. I feel happier when I am in a good place with my husband.
Mhm.
If I'm not in a good place with my husband, it's actually hurting me, you know? So I want to remember that like my relationship and the way it's going affects my whole entire day.
Right.
So that could motivate me and help me to say, okay, like how do I want my words to come across? Like, let me think about the way that I'm giving over this message, because the way that I'm giving over the message is going to affect the way the other person can receive it.
Right. Right. That's amazing. Well, thank you so, so much. With this, so I don't really see in the chat questions yet, besides from like, kind of like, but I have here some questions for Rivki. So in the realm, here, 1 second. So there's one question that I get, which is, how do we get from a passive role? Wait 1 second. Oops. Oh, wait. Am I still on? Do you still hear
Yeah, we
me?
see you and hear
Oh,
you.
yeah, I don't know why is acting up this thing. Oh, oops. Okay. Um, so how do we get from a passive role in our intimacy to an active role in achieving satisfaction in our intimate lives? That's one question. So how do we get from like, I'm guessing is how do we get from like, well, let's just go along with everything our partners say, I will give whatever it is, and then feel resentful, to actually like feel empowered. And I think you mentioned some things, but if you can just round up,
Sure.
how would you do that?
So I think that there's two steps. The first is knowing that I have a right to have needs. I
Mhm.
have a right to have desires. I have a right to like things and to not like things.
Mhm.
And it's my responsibility to share who I am with the other person. And I am allowed to, I have a right to, and it's my job to take care of myself and show up in that way by being honest and saying, hey, like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. That's part one. Part two, I would say, is to understand that someone else cannot read our minds.
Mm.
Someone else, does not know what we need and what we want. And even if we think they do, they really, really don't. And when I think that you should already know that I don't like that, you should know that you have to talk to me before you touch me. You should know that not to ask me a question before I eat breakfast. I've already told you, like, you should know. Why don't you know? And I think that thinking could create a lot of anger, because once we feel like you should already know, if you loved me, you would know. And that way of thinking could create problems and friction.
Absolutely.
So it's two parts. It's one part knowing that I have a right to state my needs and what I want. And the second part is to know that my partner is not a mind reader and they don't know what I want. And maybe they need a reminder. How many times do I forget things that people told me? How many times do I forget? Oh, I said I'm going to go to bed at 10 a.m., 10 p.m. every night, and it's 12 every night, and I didn't do it. Like, it's not easy to change, and it's not easy to remember even my own needs. So to just know, like, my partner's not a mind reader, and it's up to me to share what I want, what I don't want, what I like, what I don't like, in kind ways.
Right. So I love that, because I believe that a lot of us, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of us grew up being a little bit codependent, maybe with parents who were neglectful or that didn't have our interest in mind. And so it makes us, from what I have experienced in a personal level, and also on a professional level, we can experience that sense of like, well, I'm marrying, so this person feel my needs, the needs that I feel, that I have, and they should know those needs. And that's not the case. And it really takes, experience in marriage. It really takes, years of tuning to that, and like really disappointments that are, like you say, like our partners are not going to read our minds. And definitely, specifically I would say, and I don't know if you disagree, please, say it. In the intimate level, it is so we have so many different needs. Like, it's so different, my needs from my husband, and my needs change all the time. Let's say, for example, when we got married, right, the passion was amazing and everything was great, and but even then I remember thinking like, well, how do I tell him that I want less, or I want more, or I want this, or I want that, like, and not knowing really how to do that. But even then I realized, like, we change all the time, and all the time and I go back again to what you said, which I think is one of the major, honestly, lessons that I learned from these interviews, that honesty with myself and with my partner. Like, I need to say what I feel deep down, and you can say also what you feel. So I remember, I don't know if you allow me to share with you, like, I remember, having that situation. I wanted more intimacy and my husband wanted less. And, he said it to me, and it was so painful, and I didn't know how to handle it there. Then, as a newlywed, and I'm glad that, you are opening up, because these type of guidelines are not shared. These are not the things that you discuss when you're taking a class on the laws of marriage according to Jewish law. Or, maybe I'm imagining that new bride teachers are doing this, but it wasn't my experience. No one told me like, well, this might happen, so you should say this. As I don't know. I mean, it is really wonderful to hear that we have a guideline. We have ways of communicating, and it really comes down to honesty. And I'm actually honestly, I feel very proud and happy with my husband that he was able to state his boundaries too. So that's so thank you so much for that. And okay, so what is the biggest lesson that you wanna leave us with? What's the biggest thing that you would like to
Um, so the biggest thing that I would say is to really know yourself, to really know, because, like, related to what you said. We think we're going to, get married and this person is going to fill us up and make us happy. And the thing is, nobody could make me happy. Nobody could fill, if I have voids inside, nobody else can fill that. It's up to me to figure out, what do I need? What's going to make me feel happy? What makes me feel filled up? What makes me feel fulfilled? If I want to go on, long walks on the beach with my husband and that's what makes me feel good, I can create that. I can wait for him to create that, but then when he never does, I'm going to be angry. So what do I need? I need to spend time with friends. I need to eat healthy so that I feel good about my body. In order for me to connect, intimately with my husband, I actually need to eat healthy, because if I feel bad in my body, I don't want to be near anybody. So what can I do to take care of, how can I get to know myself? It's like getting to know your best friend. Like, what do you like? What do you not like? What makes you feel good? What makes you, to really become your own best friend, and to figure out, like, what do you like to do? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel good in the relationship? What makes you feel good, in intimate ways? What makes you feel good? How do you feel most relaxed? What do you enjoy? And it's up to me to create situations that I'm going to be able to make that work. Like, I know I need to go out with my husband, ideally once a week, out of the house. So I'm going to get a babysitter, because if I'm going to wait for my husband to get the babysitter, then we might not go out.
Right.
So maybe, everyone's different. Everyone's good at, maybe some husbands would be great at finding a babysitter, but it's like, realistically speaking, if I want to create this in my life that I want and need in my relationship, how can I create it without expecting someone else? So I would say, just to make in recap, the number one thing is to really know yourself and to love yourself and treat yourself like someone you love, and give yourself those things that bring you happiness in your relationships and in your life.
I love that. And I have a personal question. So how do you like react to someone stating a boundary, especially, let's say, to us, because we're talking about how to set boundaries to others, and I know that you mentioned before, but if you can give us like just snippets of tips, of how to handle, or best, how the best way to handle if someone says to us in an intimate setting, because that's what we're talking here, is that our husband might say also, these, I might not do this, or I might do this, that kind of thing. So how do we not feel super like, oh my gosh, I'm freak out, and like,
feelings are natural, and feelings are okay. And I believe in accepting all feelings at all times, personally. So I'm not going to try, if I might feel hurt, I might feel angry, I might feel upset. I'm not going to try to push away my feelings, but what I am going to try to do is to go deep within myself and figure out, knowing that my husband cannot fix me, right? He cannot say that you didn't mean it to make me feel better. Like, that won't even actually make me feel better, because he actually does mean it. So, instead of trying to manipulate to get to feel better, it's like, okay, what am I feeling? Like we spoke about before, reaching out to someone else. Who can I talk to about my feelings so that I can get clarity about me? This is about me. This is about, maybe someone said this to me in this way in my childhood, and there's pain coming up. Maybe it's not even about my husband. Maybe every single time someone set a boundary with me growing up, I felt like they didn't love me. So maybe it's an opportunity to heal my relationship with, someone in my life when I was younger, where I felt that there were so many boundaries and I felt unloved. It's, I guess, figuring out, like, what emotions am I feeling? What's this bringing up for me? If there's something in the relationship that I need to talk about, I first need to get clarity within myself. So if I'm having all these feelings and it's really uncomfortable, I would first want to take space to figure out, what is it that I'm feeling? Is this about the other person, or is this just about me? If it's and how do I want to deal with it? And taking the time to figure that out can give me clarity on how I want to handle it.
I love that. I love that. Take time also, right? So you
Take
have
time to figure it out.
It's so tricky to think about it, because I'm imagining it, like, we are told according to Jewish law that we're not supposed to talk. So, I'm just thinking, like, it's so hard to think about these topics specifically in intimacy, but I do believe also that intimacy permeates other areas. It's not only the physical, and I'm sure you would agree that it's not only the physical realm. And actually, for us women, and I think also for men, there's studies that show how men, to feel satisfaction, intimate satisfaction, real intimate satisfaction, they need to feel connected and partner and a friend to their wives. So we're not talking here about saying things during the act of intimacy. We're talking about being honest in all areas of your life, and actually create, it's like an atmosphere, like a identity of talking things with care and with honesty in the appropriate times. Correct? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think just also just taking time to put effort into it. I feel like, so I saw this on a YouTube video that I was watching about marriage, and it said how, sometimes we want what we can't have, so we feel like, oh, well, this is my partner for life, hopefully, so I already have them, so I don't have to put any effort. Right. And I think realizing, like, just because this person is with me doesn't mean that they don't have a choice to walk out the door at any moment. I mean, we hope that won't happen, but knowing that I don't have you, you're choosing to be with me. I'm choosing to be with you, and making it a choice every day. And yeah, this is not easy for me. I'm in the same boat as everyone else, but just reminding myself that this is a relationship that I want to keep. This is a relationship that I care about. This is a relationship that this person is choosing to be with me today. And I appreciate that. So how do I want to treat this person that I want to be with? And I think, not taking for granted that just because, this person is in front of me and loves me, I can just not think about my words. I don't have to think about my actions, and reminding myself that the way I say things and matters.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing this knowledge with us. I'm so glad I can talk to you forever. You know that we can talk for hours about this and other topics. But definitely what you share with us has been so enriching. I learn every time I talk to you, honestly, Rivkie, from the bottom of my heart. I thank you for this. I apologize. There was something going on with my Zoom, and I couldn't see the chat. And there's no screen. Like there's no. I don't know. Something happened with my. But I would love to maybe in August or maybe in September. Well, September is really like a holiday season, um, but maybe to make like a question and answer session only with you in terms of like relationships, self-care, boundaries, which is all connected as you mentioned to us. So I appreciate. How can we stay in touch with you if people that probably couldn't share the questions, I couldn't see, honestly, I don't know what happened, but like how can we stay in touch with you? What's the best way?
Well, you can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Rivkie Brownstein.
Mhm.
You can email me, Rivkie Brownstein. You can see on my screen, Rivkie Brown, that's how you spell it, rivkiebrownstein@gmail.com.
Mhm.
You can also call me or text me. My number is 954-856-7268. I do one-on-one coaching. I do workshops. I'm happy to answer any questions. So feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, and you're a great mentor. I know
Thank
by
you.
experience. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody whoever joined today. Thank you so much, and we'll be posting this interview in YouTube. So tell your friends, and hopefully we'll see you next month actually with more interviews of this series. Thank you so much, Rivkie, again. I
Thanks for
love.
having me.
Okay, bye bye.